mics, but it's the sound seems pretty good in here, and I'll scream and be hollering on occasion. So connecting the dots. This is part 2. Part 1 is found on YouTube, but we'll show where it's available. Have any of you ever seen a real urban legend before? You are looking at an urban legend. This is the GALT Chemical Reactor I'm going to be talking about that disappeared in the 70s and was rediscovered around 2000. There's a gentleman up there working on it. This is 1965. The geothermal atmospheric liquefied thorium GALT Chemical Reactor. If you look up thorium reactors on the internet right now, you're going to find it's everywhere. China. All these countries are racing to see if they can be the first to get a technology that we had 50 years ago. It does not work at explosive pressures. Instead of at 70, 80 atmospheres pressure, it's at atmospheric pressure. Unlike the pressurized light water reactors, it can be up to 1,000 times smaller because you don't have phase change difference in water. You're using liquid salts. And 1/10 the cost to operate and build. Both created by the same inventor. Care to guess which technology the inventor recommended to the government? If you look up on Wikipedia, and I just did this morning, and they talk about this, they talk about how 1968, and you'll see this picture a little later, Nobel laureate Glenn Seaborg publicly announced to the Atomic Energy Commission, of which he is the chairman, that the thorium-based reactor had successfully been developed and tested. 1968. He told the Atomic Energy Commission, but because the Cold War was going on, there were those in power that did not want this information to get out. And the question would be why? 1973, however, the U.S. government, the U.S. government shut down the thorium-related nuclear research. And it says here, was an excusable mistake. Crap happens. Well, we'll see if that's true or not. The director of Oak Ridge and had primary responsibility for the new reactor lost his job as director because he championed the development of the safer thorium reactor. His name is Weinberg. If you happen to see part 1 last year, I contend Weinberg is John Galt, and I'll explain why later. And here's another name you're going to want to remember in this saga or story. Congressman Chester Holyfield was clearly exasperated with me. This is what I contend is John Galt talking. His name's Weinberg in reality. And he blurted out to me, Alvin, if you're so concerned with the safety of reactors, then I think it's time for you to leave the nuclear industry. I was speechless. I'm contending this is John Galt talking. But it was apparent to me that my style, my attitude, and my perception of the future was no longer in tune with the powers of the Atomic Energy Commission. Now, there are many kinds of thorium reactors being designed and presently you'll read about on the market. There's a rush going on right now. The key thing is the liquid chloride thorium reactor, aim high. There's books out on what's going on. There might be 7 or 8 different variations of thorium designs, but the fundamental principles of all of them are the same. a scientifically knowledgeable layman from the 1940s, and this is when this all started. 1940s, it was during the Manhattan Project. When they discovered the uranium side, they also discovered the thorium side. One creates bombs, one could create cheap energy, can create bombs. The thorium side, one of the things is, its principle is the heat from the electric power generation is drawn from the same natural geothermal heat sources that keeps the interior of our planet molten hot for billions of years, up to about 11,000 degrees. In fact, if you were to consider this like a giant reactor, and here's the reference of the book, the uranium plutonium is doing the equivalent of about 20 million megawatt hours of heat per hour that's being generated by this. And in the 40s, some of these Manhattan scientists realized what's going on in the Earth to heat it up. We could use that on the surface of the planet and do the same process. In fact, in 1945, it was discovered that this remarkable heat source could actually operate on the surface of the planet at atmospheric pressure. You didn't need these huge pressure containers. Reactors like former Maine Yankee, the 27th reactor built in '72, which is 900 megawatts. There's also, it's operating at a pressure which is like a submarine at 2,400 feet below the water surface, which could just crush it. Now you've got the explosive side that you're trying to contain with the pressure to get the water under. When you use molten salt, it doesn't phase change. It was amazing. There was, and more importantly, thorium is the inexhaustible fuel that is not only abundant in quantities on the Earth, and thus we have the geothermal atmosphere of liquefied thorium, GALT, energy, for the remainder of mankind's stay on. They figure there's an 8 billion year supply of it here on this planet. Of course, the sun's going to go red in about 4 billion years and burn up the planet, but that's still enough to work with. And they have found it on Mars and the Moon. They know it's there, so they've got their power supply for future colonies. So this was the exciting thing going on at the time, as I said here about the sun expansion. So I'm doing this research, and there's some strange things going on here. Here's Eddie Willard's Atlas Shrugged, chapter 1, and the theme said, one night, this is page 5, if you haven't started Atlas Shrugged yet. One night, lightning struck the oak tree. It lay broken in half, and he looked into the trunk as if into the mouth of a black tunnel. The trunk was only an empty shell. It was an immense betrayal, he says a little later. More than a terrible, because he could not grasp what it was that had been betrayed. Well, we're going to find out a little bit about that in this presentation. On December 31st, 1974, there were 2 government atomic agencies that were founded in 1947, so they've been around quite a while. A world-renowned government National Atomic Laboratory founded in 1942 during the Manhattan Project that had been around quite a while. And the 3 top US politicians involved with atomic energy in 1945, since 1945, disappeared. GALT became an urban legend until the year 2000. Here is the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say in the past. I was contacted by an energy foundation about 5 years ago. I was asked if I could lend some of my time and expertise to investigating in the rediscovery of this breakthrough energy technology. It was first conceived in the 1940s. Around that time, Ayn Rand was interviewing the Manhattan Project leader, Robert Oppenheimer, known as Oppie, for a screenplay, Top Secret. He had dispatched Chicago physicist, the guy I contend is Alvin Weinberg, to a hidden government laboratory in the small rural community of Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Weinberg was there to develop a secret technology that would have ended the age of petroleum. Oppie confided to AR in January 1946 meetings that powerful elites vowed to keep this technology from seeing the light of day. Just even personal knowledge of this ongoing research could get AR executed if these elites learned of it. As I slowly peeled away the layers of mysteries and clues from these past giants of the 20th century, I became more astonished at what I was unearthing. The two most exciting aspects of the research was discovering the technology is essentially a GALT chemical reactor. And when I started checking the inventor's personal biography, it is a close match for AR's John Galt in the epic novel Atlas Shrugged. So here's part one, which is on YouTube. We just posted it a few days ago. I didn't want it out too much earlier than showing up here. And you'll find in your book where that is. And remember this, because this I used last year, but I held off a year or two to get into some specific things that this topic will relate to. Just briefly from last year. Here's the page in John Galt's book where Dr. Hugh Aston is sharing some information about John Galt.
I know my father.
This is Alvin Weinberg, who I contend is the real John Galt. It'll be in the YouTube at the same time. The key thing is there was a list of items listed on age 16, going off to college broke and so forth. He's going through all these. This is really as he's going through a checklist.
After high school. I graduated high school. I just turned 16.
Yes, well, being only 16.
You'll find in the presentation, the last year's presentation,
2 years.
it'll have what's going on here. But to proceed with this presentation, we'll continue on. Our presenter is Ayn Rand executed an Atlas Shrugged code concept decades before Dan Brown's DaVinci Code. With the aid of my youngest son helping me get some of the stuff on YouTube and so forth, we felt it was time to start getting some of this information out that we're disclosing to the foundation. And as I said, you'll find the stuff on YouTube. This happens to be the son in Maine, who's the state senator, youngest in the country. We're fighting the federal government. We're going state by